Rev up your engines! With modern cars getting more and more complex, real mechanics like myself have to do a lot of doctor work. And just like medical doctors, we need specimen samples. We can analyze the oil, we take out the dipstick, shove a tube in the hole, all the way in. We stick the tube in the little pump and here we go. And as you can see, gotta do a lot of pumping, it's a long hose. Then this is sent to be analyzed. Then you just unscrew the bottle, it's about 2/3 full. Screw the top on, there's your sample. Then you stick it in the bag and mail it to the company. In this case, it's JG Lubricant. They got 3 different addresses depending on where the closest one you live. In my case, it's the one that's in Indianapolis. If you're near Houston, there's one in Houston. There's another one in Salt Lake City, Utah. You just mail it to the closest one. Their phone number and the website and all that stuff if you're curious. Then when they're done, you go online. Just usually takes a few days and you'll get an analysis of it. If you have any questions, they got a toll-free number. You can call them up and ask them questions. Now, you might think, what do I want to have the oil analyzed for? Just like when you go to the doctor, if you're old like me, and they do blood tests and stuff, they'll tell you what kind of shape you're in. This tells you what kind of shape your engine is in. Maybe you're thinking about buying a car, maybe you're deciding, should I keep this car, should I get rid of it? What if the engine is on its last legs? Well, if an engine is on its last legs, it will have a bunch of different metallic compounds in the oil. For example, the bearings on your camshaft, they're softer, made of a different material than other parts of the engine. So, if it's got a bunch of metal buildup, probably time to get another car unless you want to rebuild your engine. Because see, the problem with bearings are, your car might be running perfectly fine. The bearings are inside the engine. You can't test them. The only way you can check them is by taking the whole engine apart, getting a micrometer, measuring and see if they're within specs, right? If these bearings are worn, that means your engine's in bad shape. And you'd be better to either put another engine in it, or if you're thinking, gee, it's an old car, shall I keep it or get rid of it? Get rid of it then, because it's still running, right? Once the engine blows, you're not going to get anything for it. And conversely, if you think that you want to buy a car and you wonder, hey, is the engine all worn out? Especially if you're buying a high mileage one. A lot of vehicles these days used to have over 100,000 miles, and they can still run a long time if they're Toyotas or Hondas, well-built engines, right? But for the money you're paying for a used vehicle, the average used vehicle is like 26 grand today. It's worthwhile to have a little test done. Just like doctors are doing your blood tests, this is going to do a test of the engine oil, and it is very important. Tell you, is it wearing out inside? Or, hey, no, that's just normal. And these guys know, they can give you the information. And they also have the same kit that does a coolant analysis if you want the cooling system analyzed. Believe me, cars are so expensive and so complicated these days, you're better off having these tests done. Maybe you got a Toyota that's got 200,000 miles. You do the test, you find out that it's fine, the engine isn't worn, keep driving it. Or you might own a Chrysler and it's telling you that engine's ready to go, and then get rid of the thing. Now, just like a doctor uses a stethoscope to listen to your heart, lungs and stuff, we mechanics have electronic stethoscopes. Now this is something you can easily buy yourself. This particular one is made by this Chinese company there. They all work the same. Didn't cost much. It even comes with these cheap headphones. You can hear all kinds of noises with this thing and find where problems are coming from. Say your engine's ticking. Well, you can check the fuel injectors. You can check to see if the valves are clacking by putting it on the top of the valve cover. Maybe you got a humming noise coming from the drive belts. You can put it on the alternator, see if the alternator's humming, or the water pump. These things are great for finding the source of noises, but let's say it only makes the noise when the vehicle's running down the road. Well, let's face the facts. You can't be sitting inside the engine while someone's driving, or hanging on the outside of the car trying to stick this on the bottom of the transmission. So, what do? Give up and say, I don't know where the noise is coming from? Well, a lot of crappy mechanics do that, right? But just get another tool. And in this case, it's another Chinese-made one. This thing cost me like 70 bucks on Amazon. Auto noise detector. There it is. Auto noise detector. Noise master. You know, I mean, they all work the same way. You basically just turn it on, and then you can see it's got power. And it comes with 6 wired sensors. You clamp them wherever you think the noise is coming from. You got 6 of them. And when you drive down the road, you can click at the channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. seeing where the noise is coming from. Check it out. In this case, it's coming from me. Blah, 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 blah. And this is a pretty cool one because not only can you put the headphones on, but you can see this. Blah, blah. And it's adjustable too. But of course, normally you want to use the headphones. They work a lot better. You can hear it. When you're driving down the road, you're better to let someone else drive, of course, right? You can sit in the passenger seat. Then, as you hear the noise, you can click through all 6 channels if you hook all 6 of them up and find where the closest sound is coming from. The one that's the loudest, the one that lights it up most. And then if you need to pinpoint more, let's say it's channel 3, you go to where the channel 3 clamp is and put clamps all around that and find where the loudest sound is coming from. Now, granted, it came with really crappy headsets, so I got these Chinese headsets, cheap enough. Everybody's got headphones. You can use any of them. They all plug in with those mini jacks, right? This is great for finding the source of noises. Now, I got a few videos on YouTube showing exactly the usage of them, and in one of them, I'm using a wireless system. But the wireless system, as far as I'm concerned, has 3 main problems. One, they're wireless, they get interference, you can pick up noise. This is all wired, it's not going to be affected by broadcasting, it's all wired, right? And number 2, the wireless ones, each sensor has to have a battery in it, they're always going bad, then you got to replace the battery, yada, 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 yada. This thing only has one 9-volt battery in the unit itself, and it lasts for years, usually before the 9-volt battery, and there's only one of them. But then there's the number 3 reason, and to me it's the most important. Okay, the wireless ones can cost $300 to $500. This thing was like $60-something on Amazon. And hey, at this price, why not? A lot of times, wired is better than wireless. Yeah, you gotta route the wires, stick a little tape here and there to hold them in place while you're driving down the road. But I've never had problems with these. And the wireless ones, I have 2 of them. They're always breaking. One of them's permanently broken now. The other one, the batteries are all dead. Hey, one 9-volt battery beats a bunch of different batteries. And like I said, being wired, you don't get the interference that you get in a lot of wireless crap. Now, another thing that you see doctors use are oscilloscopes. And they got EKGs, they're measuring all kinds of stuff in you. Well, guess what? Car doctors use that stuff now too. You got a measurement. We got everything, especially an oscilloscope. Oh, we can analyze the wave patterns, and since, hey, nobody can remember everything, you can use an online waveform library to compare what a good waveform is to a bad waveform. Hey, doctors do the same kind of stuff. These are complex, you need this stuff. For example, here's a test for Volkswagen, right? This test measures the signal voltage of the VVT regulating valve for the variable valve timing. If you don't know it, your cars have what are called variable valve timing. The timing of the valves can be varied a certain amount for either power or gas mileage and less pollution. So, those systems are very complex, right? Here's what the signal should look like, and then you can compare yours. Yes, indeed, things are getting that complex in cars. You're going to need computer fixers like oscilloscopes to see what's wrong. And understand, this is an actual oscilloscope reading. This is not data from the OBD port in a scan tool. This happens to be a scan tool too, but it's also an oscilloscope. It's a scan tool. This is the interface that plugs under the dash, but as you can see, it is a 1, 2, 3, 4 channel freeze frame oscilloscope too. And as you can see here, it's also a waveform generator. You can generate things. So let's say you don't know if the computer's bad or the sensor's bad, right? So you can generate the waveforms, and if you find that, hey, the thing runs fine now, you'll know that the sensor's okay, but the computer's not sending the sensor the information. Or the computer's okay, but regardless of the computer, set the waveform up with the sensor, doesn't work, you know, the sensor's bad. It's getting complicated, yeah. So now I suppose you're thinking, how can anybody fix these cars? It's getting to be insane. Well, on the plus side, if you get a well-made one, with good software, like this V8 Toyota, there are a lot of self-checking devices in it. If I went through all of the data on this truck, you would see a bunch of things. This test, pass, fail, and they all say pass, 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 pass. It's always testing itself. So, it's not like you gotta go through 500 lines of data, memorize them all, and analyze it all. For example, to test if the catalytic converters are clogged, I used to have to take off the oxygen sensor, which is a pain, they're usually rusted on, stick a pressure gauge in, see what the pressure is. Well, guess what? These new ones, They have sensors for that, and scan computer will read that stuff, and I can read the data. Same thing with the fuel pump. These things are all using high pressure GDI fuel pumps these days. Almost all the cars do. And of course, it's very dangerous to unhook a pump that might put out 1500 psi, could leak, start a fire, blah blah blah. Well, with these fancy scan tools, I just go to the data. It will show things like commanded fuel pressure and then actual fuel pressure. So you know the computer is commanding the right pressure, and then is it actually putting out the pressure? The machine shows you. So we don't have to, one, get our hands dirty, maybe start a fire. We can do it all from inside the vehicle with a very high level scan tool. I know some people can say, Scotty, well, why do you really need an oscilloscope? When I plug in my scan tool to the dash, the OBD port, I can get all kinds of graphs for fuel injector and ignition and stuff, but realize this. The speed of information coming out of this OBD port is relatively low. It has what's called a relatively slow refresh rate. They always tell you, well, if you're going to do a graph with the scan tool, just pick 1 or 2 or 3 things because it'll refresh faster. If you have all the data, it's real slow. But even when you only have 1 or 2, it's still pretty slow. When you hook up an actual oscilloscope, those things are extremely accurate, often to 1,000ths of a second or even less than that. So when there is a problem and you have to pinpoint it, you need oscilloscope, and it's got to be a good one. I tried cheaper ones. I've actually gone out and bought $100, $180 one. I even have a $50 oscilloscope. And you know what I say about them? They're crap for cars. Now, they might be okay if you're playing with the transistor board on an old radio or you're messing with something small like that. But for a car, all of the interference, you got many things spinning, putting out electricity, wireless stuff gets screwed up. You're best having a real oscilloscope where you hook the wires up to the stuff you're analyzing, and then you'll get a true picture of it, and not something that may be way off, because not only does it not refresh fast enough, but it doesn't have the fine capability to read everything. So even though there's a glitch, it might miss that glitch. The oscilloscope will get everything right in line, and you'll be able to find out what the problem is. Yeah, you got to be an electronic engineer now to work on cars, if you go that far. So what does all this mean to you? If you need a mechanic, you got to make sure you have a good one. A lot of guys call themselves mechanics these days. If they don't have this type of equipment, they're not going to be able to go far enough to find out a serious problem with your car. As example, I said the oil sample, right? To see if your engine's breaking down inside. Well, an old school mechanic, if they're checking out a used car for you, might just listen and say, oh, the engine sounds good, great. Well, the problem is, you could have worn bearings on the bottom, and they're ready to go out, but they're working fine now because they're soaked in oil. But if it lets loose, then it throws a rod. I've had customers in the past, they bought a car and somebody else checked it out. Sometimes they were in another state. And then the engine blows up. They bring it to me and I look and I say, well, through a rod. And if you would have checked that oil with an oil analysis, you would have known, oh, geez, those bearings are on their way out because this type of metal is in there. I'm not going to buy this car. And of course, preventive maintenance is what you really want to do to a car. That and prevent from having problems by buying a quality vehicle like this V8 Sequoia. Unfortunately, you can't buy a new one anymore. Last few years, they've only been making the twin-turbo V6s. Yes, the twin-turbo V6s that have been blowing up, and Toyota says they're going to have to replace 100,000 engines. So, a lot has to do with maintaining and buying the right vehicle in the first place. Nothing is as simple as it used to be. You can see how complex it is fixing cars. Even buying them can be complex. You got to know a little bit more than you used to. Used to be you could just, oh, buy a Toyota, no problem, drive it forever. Well, now that's not the case with some of the new ones. That's why I'm here to help everybody out. And if you want to visit Scotty the Car Doctor, lines are now open. Well, ScottyKilmer@gmail.com is, and this doctor doesn't charge anything for a checkup. Check him out free, make a video, help other people out. So, how many doctors you're going to find to give you a free house call as long as you bring it to his house? So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.